Welcome, foolish mortals, to the Halloween edition of the Coaster Challenge podcast. And here are your hosts, David Cantu, Jenna Gazelle.
Hey, how's it going, Jenna?
Great, how's it going, Dave?
It's going good, going good. It's that time of year.
Yay!
It is Halloween, and boy, is it going to be an epic holiday season this Halloween. Boy, the parks really have got a lot going on this season, Jen.
I know, with them being closed last year because of the pandemic, it gave them time to plan.
Boy, were they planning. In fact, we've got a very, very special treat for all of you guys out there today. We're going to be kicking off this Halloween season with our very, very special guest today. We've got Jeff Tucker, who is with Knott's Berry Farm. He is one of the people that does all the shows and stuff for Knott's Scary Farm. And Andrew is standing by with him today, and he's got quite an incredible story. He's been with Knott's Berry Farm for almost 30 years, Jen, and he's been doing Knott's Scary Farm all that time.
I know. Oh, man. I can't wait.
Oh, it's going to be a really fun season, guys. I hope you guys are all going to have a fun and make sure to go visit all the Horror Nights and Fright Fest and Knott's Scary Farm if you're out here in California. Definitely like to share with everybody, but the entire Coaster Challenge team will be in California this month. We will be at Knott's Scary Farm on its opening night, or its opening weekend, I should say, but we will be there, I believe it is, the 18th?
Yep,
the 18th. So the entire Coaster Challenge team will be in California that weekend, but we will be kicking off at Knott's Scary Farm, and then we will be at Disneyland on the 19th. So if you guys happen to want to meet us, we'll be at the Disneyland Resort also this Sunday.
19th. We'll also be there on Friday.
Yeah.
Too. So.
Yeah, Friday. So if you guys happen to be in the area, make sure to come hit us up. We'll definitely be keeping everybody posted on our social media platforms. Well, we got Andrew standing by with Jeff Tucker, Jen, but first we are going to do a very special Halloween version of the YouTube highlight clip of the week.
This is the YouTube highlight clip of the week, Halloween edition.
Alright, so since Jeff Tucker is on the show today, Jen and I thought it would be a really fun discussion on talking about this week's YouTube highlight clip of the week. We are going to be talking a little bit about Knott's Scary Farm. Now, Jen, have you experienced Knott's Scary Farm?
No, the Saturday will be the first time.
Oh, you're going to be...
I'm a little nervous.
Oh, well, my deepest sympathies. I know how you feel because I used to be that way many years ago. Much as I was somebody who was deeply afraid to get on coasters and stuff, but I will tell you guys, Halloween events I was not very good. I was like with how Jen was. I was very scared. I would go to the events. I've always gone to Knott's Scary Farm, but I've never gone in the mazes. It was not until 2019 when I finally got to start getting the courage to go into the mazes.
Yeah, I've been through one maze at one of the other parks, and I was kind of forced into it, so I don't know how I feel about going to this one.
Well, at least you got your boyfriend. You got your boyfriend going to be with you.
Oh yeah, Mike's so great at not scaring people. He's so supportive. He'll be the one that's going to be trying to scare all of us, or trying to coax the people to scare us. I can already see it.
Well, I know that Andrew, who's standing with Jeff today, he's excited. He's a big haunt fan. I love Halloween. I love decorating for myself, but I will tell you, Knott's Scary Farm is probably one of the most unique haunt events because this is not a family-friendly event, guys. This is something I don't recommend anybody under 12 should be going to this event. This is really an adult function event. There is no safe zone at Knott's Berry Farm. The whole park is a scare zone, especially when you go through Ghost Town. When you go through Ghost Town, it is so deep fog when you're going through Ghost Town. You cannot see anything in front of you. And I remember one time I went through there and I literally had a zombie face come right up to my face through the fog, and that scared the living daylights out of me.
Oh, okay. Not helping.
But I will tell you that it is fun. You will definitely get some sort of encounters. I will say, I think the greatest one I saw. So I was over by Silver Bullet. I was having a soda and stuff. I was just sitting down in a rest area, and I was watching this group of guys. They were like, I think that these guys were like probably older teens. They were probably like 17, 18, 19 years old. There was probably about 20 of them. They were all in a group together, and they were all bundled up together. Well, apparently one of the scare actors managed to blend himself in that group where they had no idea because it's really dark through that area. And then all of a sudden, the guy managed to get in the center of the group, and all of a sudden, he just gave off this huge firecracker sound, and you just saw the entire group just disperse in all directions. They like took off running, like they're not together. They like total disperse and ran throughout different areas of the park. And I just started laughing my head off because I thought that was brilliant. I like to know how that scare actor was able to blend himself in the group, and they didn't even pay attention to that.
Right.
But I will tell you, Not Scary Farm, its opening ceremonies are some of the greatest opening ceremonies I've ever seen. I'll never forget the 2013 opening that they had a long time ago, where they literally picked up a woman and carried her into the park with all the zombies and stuff, and they made it look like they ripped her to shreds before they opened the gates to the public. They've done like all different types. Like they even had one where a witch came rising up by the water tower of Knott's Berry Farm, and they were just like had incredible themes and everything. I'm really looking forward to seeing what they have in store this year.
Well, from what I've seen in the ads, there's something about Roaring 20s, which that's what's kind of piqued my interest, because I kind of want to see like what the areas are going to be.
Yeah, I'm really curious myself. Like I said, I'm not a big maze person, but I will say I will be going through the mazes at least once. I'm pretty sure my correspondence team will be happy to share down the road. But I will tell you guys, we're going to be putting in the show notes this incredible link of the 2019 opening ceremony of Not Scary Farm. It's definitely really worth to watch. Make sure to check it out. But this was a really good Halloween version of the YouTube Highlight Clip of the Week.
It's the YouTube Highlight Clip of the Week, Halloween edition.
All right, so Andrew is standing by with our special guest today. We've got Jeff Tucker from Knott's Berry Farm. He's got an incredible story to share with all of you guys when it comes to haunts and Knott's Scary Farm. It's going to be a very incredible interview, so take it away, Andrew.
Thank you, David and Jenna. This is Andrew, one of the producers of the Coaster Challenge podcast. Today, I have a very special guest we're going to be talking with. So I currently live in Florida, as many of our audience members know from the stories I've told in previous episodes. But I've not always lived in Florida. I used to live in Southern California, actually Northern California previously as well. But for quite some time now, I had lived in Southern California and had called some amazing theme parks, if you will, the West Coast theme park capital, places like Disneyland, Magic Mountain, Universal Hollywood, SeaWorld San Diego, and one more park as my home parks. And that other park is Knott's Berry Farm, which is a charming, historic theme park that's been around, one of the oldest theme parks in the country, older than Disneyland. In fact, many people don't realize. I love going there. They have some of the most incredible special events, one of my favorite special events at any theme park anywhere. And so I'm very excited today to be talking to Jeff Tucker from Knott's Berry Farm. Welcome to the podcast, Jeff.
Hey, it's great to be here. Thank you for having me on the show.
We are delighted to have you. Thank you so much. We appreciate your time. I've already kind of let the cat out of the bag, Jeff, but why don't you tell us about yourself, first of all, and also tell us what you do in the theme park industry. Obviously, you work with Knott's and anything else you might do that's connected.
Well, I work at Knott's Berry Farm. I'm there 364 days a year, practically. We're only closed on Christmas. I started there in 1994. I had just left a job at the mall. I worked at Spencer Gifts, selling novelties and toys. I was looking for something fun to do for the summer. And like a lot of people who have my story at Knott's Berry Farm, we were only going to work there until something else opened up. And then you find out how great the place is and how much it's a family affair. And when I started, the Knott family was actually still running the park. I became this sort of go-to guy at the park. I did a million different jobs on property. I was a tour guide. I was a clerk. I worked in Sad-Eye Joe as the voice of this dummy in the jail. I have been the storyteller in Mystery Lodge. And then I moved into management and have worked my way up. And now I'm currently the show writer at Knott's Berry Farm. There's a few of us. And we basically write every show that you see there. We work on shows year round. We always are working on a million different projects at once. I've had the fortune of being in the right place at the right time. and I've spearheaded some amazing projects with some amazing teams. I did a couple of shows in the Mystery Lodge where we used the holovision effect to scare people during Scary Farm. We did Unearthed and Possessed. Possessed was great because it involved my daughter as a ghost scaring people, which was so much fun. I've trained monsters how to be scary. They've trained me how to be scarier. I created and worked on Trapped, which was an upcharge maze at the park that was sort of way at the beginning of the escape room phenomenon, and was really weird to see it spread like wildfire. A bunch of people had come up with these ideas at the same time, and they sort of got refined and improved on, and a formula was created. But it was great to be at the early stages of that. We weren't the first, but we were a big scale version of it. I have enjoyed every minute I've worked at Knott's Berry Farm, every hour at Knott's Scary Farm. I've done it all. I have been the Twitter guy, the Facebook guy. I write packaging for the park. If you buy something and it says like a little blurb about Knott's, I write that. You name it, and I have done it at Knott's Berry Farm.
That is so cool, and you know, I know that you've been so involved there for a long time now. From I've heard you in interviews and other podcasts, and big podcasts I'm a fan of. Like certainly, the Season Pass, for example, is a big one with Doug Barnes.
Yeah, those are great guys.
Oh yeah, Doug is awesome. Doug, Robert, they're all great. Yeah, just great senses of humor and just treasure troves of theme park stories and great interviewers too. So I've learned more and more about you over time. And as we were talking before we started recording, as I've talked about with our audience before, I have been to Knott's Scary Farm many times, and the last time was in 2017 before I moved out here in Florida at the Mice Chat event that they do there one night a year. And where, there's all sort of special behind the scenes going to see some of the mazes go up in the daylight before they're open to the public, and then going to Mrs. Knott's restaurant. And that's where you and some of the other folks that are involved kind of talk about what you've done that year, some special new things and new mazes and whatnot. And so I remember listening to you there. But yeah, I just, with how much you've been involved with the park and the storytelling, which is a huge, probably the most important aspect to a theme park, any attraction or event, is the storytelling, which really sets the scene for everything. Yeah. So I'm really looking forward to having our discussion here today. So thank you. Yeah.
There was a moment when we did Possessed where it took place at the Mystery Lodge Theater, and we made a video that we played before the show where we talked about the history of the land and how we said that Knott's Berry Farm used to be a real farm, and it was on farmland. And we showed pictures of farms, and then we showed a dilapidated house where this family lived and where there was a murder, and the little girl was this possessed little kid. And we had people in the public and who worked there who said, I never knew that story. And I just look at them and say, well, those were Google images. That didn't really happen. Did that happen? And it does tell you the importance of the story to the attraction. It's not just what is it, it's what is it? It's a different tone.
Yeah, the best stories that are when they're fictitious stories are ones that are people that are so well told, whether it be what the story is itself, how it's told, the acting, special effects, the narrative, whatever it may be, where it all comes together. And if it does come together as a great story, cohesive and organic, where people think it actually is true in a scenario like that, then you've done your job.
I learned that on Possessed, and then it was reinforced a year later on Trapped, because on the third year of Trapped, when the guests made it to the second room, they encountered a guest who was lost in the maze. And she would say, my boyfriend and I were in here and we got separated, because we're going to talk about fear. But one of the biggest fears people have in a scary attraction is getting separated and not being there with your significant other, your friend, whatever it is, for that support. We preyed upon that. But to me, it was so obvious that they worked for us. They were a plant. They were obvious. No, 99% of people bought it hook, line, and sinker, that it was a real guest lost in the maze. And I just thought that was amazing.
That's incredible. And again, we're going to go off on tangents. We do that in this podcast. Any good conversation goes on tangents. I'm also usually pretty good about bringing things back from tangents back on. So we're going to talk more about haunts later, but just out of curiosity, this Trapped maze. So what years did you guys do it? This 12, upcharge?
12, 13, 14.
Okay, because that was back, I was living in Northern California for most of that time. That's why I never got to see that, because I love escape rooms. So that's fascinating. Wow, that's really cool.
The best compliment I got was on year 3, I promised people that it would be a pretty significant time that you'd be in the maze. Doug and Brent and Robert came through. They recorded it, the audio of it. And afterwards, Doug comes to me and he says, look, Jeff, I'm kind of embarrassed that we went through and it was like 10 minutes. And I don't know if what am I going to tell people? And I said, Doug, check the tape. Are you kidding? Check the tape. And you ever seen Contact with Jodie Foster?
Yes, I was just thinking of that. Yeah.
Where they go, check the tape.
Right.
And we were in there 27 minutes. And he had no concept that it had been that long. And I said, that's how we know we were doing a good job. You were so into it. You lost track of time. You were in that stressful situation for nearly 30 minutes. And I said, I think we've done our job here.
Yeah, because in a situation like that where you're so, and it could be a fun thing, an entertaining thing like that. It could be a test or something, it could be something really stressful. If it's really taking up your attention and immersing you in whatever it is, the time goes by, your perception of time is very distorted. And it oftentimes is a longer period than what you thought it was because of the intensity and how focused you are. That's a crazy story. Wow, that's awesome. That's awesome. Before again, I've already made it clear. I'm very excited to talk to you a lot about the things you've done with knots and everything. And especially here now that we're in haunt season and a fear is a paramount to that. And we'll get to that. But before we get to that, we always take our guests on our theme park time machine. And, you are no different in that regard because obviously you're a theme park fan. You're not just a person who creates content and creates these amazing experiences. So I want to take you through some of our typical questions, at least a few of them. Tell me, what was your first theme park attraction you remember experiencing?
Okay, so I racked my brain because the first one that always comes to mind for my generation is Haunted Mansion. But we couldn't afford to go to Disneyland a lot when I was a kid. It was very expensive.
It still is. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, it's even more now, right?
Yeah.
Instead of taking your kids, it costs a kid. People don't know that. The first theme park attraction that made an impression on me was the Magic Pagoda ride at Six Flags, Magic Mountain.
Magic Pagoda. I've heard of this ride. I don't think I've ever been on it. What is that ride?
It was this nonsensical, non-linear dark ride through optical illusions. It had mirrors and strobes. And guess what? No footage exists of it. No photos. Very few exist of it. So it's one of those things that's just lost to time. And I remember as a kid just being entranced by it. And when I went back to Magic Mountain as a teen, trying to explain, like, where's that thing that does and they have no idea what you're talking about. It's the same phenomenon at Knott's now when people ask about the Haunted Shack. They go, that crooked house? And I go, yeah, it left in 2000, 2001. It's gone.
Gotcha. Right. Okay. Interesting. Well, that's fascinating. And you were talking about the Mystery Lodge earlier. You mentioned the Haunted Mansion. So I am not an artist. I don't have the artist brain. I'm an engineer. I'm the science kind of side of things. Even as an engineer and being, very much a fan of science and STEM in general, I am a huge appreciator of the arts, performing arts, plays, musicals, movies. We've talked about that, TV shows, and, theme parks. I'm not, again, this is a coaster. Originally was a coaster channel, coaster challenge. We have a lot of coaster enthusiasts like myself, David, that are involved with this or audience members, listeners and whatnot. But we also, a lot of us, David, myself, big theme park fans. Certainly I will speak for myself here. When I go to a theme park, even if I don't have a lot of time, I'll go see the shows. I mean, certainly, ones that I've heard about that are good and whatnot. And, it's not just about getting on a coaster or getting on a thrill ride. Being an engineer, I'm actually my formal background, my education, if you will, is I'm an optical engineer. So going through the ballroom scene of the Haunted Mansion or just Mystery Lodge itself, the Pepper's Ghost effect, which is one of the most amazing effects that are used pretty commonly these days in theme parks. So well executed. And as technology is kind of keeping up with things, some of the newer things, Disney and Knott's are doing, and other Universal, it's amazing, amazing stuff to really make things look realistic and whatnot. So this magical pagoda attraction, man, I wish I could have experienced it as an optical engineer. It sounds like I would have had a lot of fun, but so that was your first. Okay. Very interesting. Very unique. I'm guessing it probably wasn't that attraction, but tell me from that first one till today, what is the theme park attraction, the one that scared you the most before getting on it, was most intimidating for you?
Well, like you said in the beginning, I'm not a big coaster guy.
Right.
I'm more of a dark ride guy. Now, to be fair, in full disclosure, my drink is sitting on a coaster, so that does count a little bit. Okay, so it's good. It's not a challenge,
All right.
but it is sitting on a coaster. Okay, but when I was a kid, again, we didn't have a lot of money. One of the things we used to do, my mother was religious about going to the LA County Fair because it was pretty cheap to go back in the day. And then the whole midway of carnival rides was great. The ride that scared me was one of those bump and go haunted house, like Blood Castle rides.
Oh,
you
yeah.
get in the little 2-seater and it takes you in. My sister and I went in one of those probably around 1977, 78. It was the scariest thing I'd ever been on. It was scary in that it didn't look well made. It felt like we were going to fly out of the car at any time. It was just a big tractor trailer, and you would bump into the scene and a buzzer would go off, and some body or something would lurch forward. And as soon as that happened, it would jerk you the other way and then bump into another scene. And the mental image I have it is that it lasted 6 hours. Like it was like being waterboarded. You had to pay tickets for it. It just seemed to go on for days, and it scared me so much. Walking out of that ride just was like, thank God it's over. Oh my God. It felt like when the Iran hostages left the plane and got to the tarmac.
Right. Interesting. Yeah. I mean, I've been on all kinds of dark rides over the years. I mean, when people think of dark rides, they think of the Haunted Mansion Pirates and things like that. And certainly those are dark rides, no question. There are certainly all sorts of dark rides out there. You were talking about the Magical Pagoda. That would be certainly a dark ride. Knott's Berry Tales, one of the newest attractions there at Knott's. That's certainly a dark ride. Even your kind of interactive games, thing, which that partly is, or like a Toy Story Midway Mania, a dark ride. But there also are these kind of other class of dark rides that kind of almost get into the kind of the second half of the interview, kind of the theme of that, which we'll get to later, of course, being the second half, where it's sort of creepy and scary. And the Haunted Mansion can be like this a little bit too, where, things bump around and it's almost like it's intended to be bumpy. So that's part of the effect to kind of freak people out, and just the kind of creepiness, the creepy scenes, the lighting, the sounds, and and what you see, of course. I have been to, like you said, fairs like that. I've been to all sorts of fairs. I used to go to the San Diego County Fair, which is a very big fair, not far from LA, of course. I've been to the Meadowlands Fair in New Jersey, which is one of the biggest ones. I've been to, all over the country, and, traveling carnivals and things like that. But, one of my old home parks, as I mentioned in the intro here for this interview, I used to live not just in Southern California, but Northern California. If I know where I'm going with this. I lived, and some of my favorite places to live, Capitola, California, and Santa Cruz, which are right next to each other. Love that area. Beautiful area. And of course, there's the Santa Cruz Beach Boardwalk, and that was my home park for a number of years. And Santa Cruz Beach Boardwalk has been featured in movies like Lost, like Us, Jordan Peele's recent masterpiece from a couple of years ago. It's, it's famous for the Giant Dipper, which is this classic loose wooden coaster that's over 100 years old. Great, still runs great. And, it's right on the beach there. It's beautiful. And it's one of these last remaining seaside parks from a bygone era. But another thing and why I bring it up now, that the Santa Cruz Beach Boardwalk is famous for. And by the way, listeners, if I'm not selling you on already, you've got to go there if you've never been. David has never been. We're hoping to meet there when I go to California in August. But one of the really cool features of Santa Cruz Beach Boardwalk is their dark rides. They have these sort of classic, 50s era, I guess would be 50s or 60s dark rides, the bumpy ones, and the ones with the crazy hokey show scenes. I definitely get why, especially in terms of it being scary for you and intimidating before getting on it, because you have no idea what's going on inside that trailer, that movable building that's at that fair there that the dark ride is part of. So that's totally understandable. You're the first person that's brought up a ride like that to us, but it totally makes sense.
Well, yeah, if you're on the midway and you're watching the ride, you've seen the people go in, and then a few minutes later, you see them on the second level, and you go, oh my God, how'd they get up there? And how are they going to get down? And what's in there? I don't want to know. I had to go. I had to go.
Yeah, no, totally makes sense. Talk to me. You've already set the stage. You're at the, LA County Fair. How old were you, by the way?
About 6.
You're young too. Sure, which you contribute. So, because the younger we are, the less prepared we are to deal with fearful situations in general in life. Talk to me about what you remember going through your head, through your mind as you were, on the line to go into this, watching, the cars coming in and out and so forth.
Same thing a lot of other people do. You're like, I'm doing this willingly. I'm going to pay for this privilege. These people are coming out traumatized. It's scary as all get out. It's black paint and bats and a vampire on the side, and it's the title has blood in it. Why would anybody do this? And then you're like, okay, we're almost there. We're almost up to the front, and the turnstile is clicking, and the toothless carny is waiting for your tickets. This is back when everybody was done with actual tickets, and you're giving like a huge percentage, because the dark rides cost almost the same as any of the roller coaster rides. They were not the cheap ones. I mean, if you got on the motorcycles that went around in a circle, that's like 2 tickets. The Blood Castle one, that's like 8 tickets. I'm giving up 4 rides on the motorcycle for this. So everything about it is scary, from the very idea of it to the commerce portion of it.
Wow, that's crazy. Yeah, just the name of itself, by the way, Blood Castle. I
don't want to go in a Blood Castle.
Yeah, who wants to go in a Blood Castle?
Not me, but there I was. And let's not forget the one that was at the Pike, that similar attraction had a real dead body in it.
Really?
Yes.
Wow.
It was featured in an episode of The $6 Million Man, when somebody finally said, that thing you have on display in there's a real body.
Oh, wow. That's interesting. Wow. Yeah. I never got to experience the Long Beach Pike because it was gone by the time I moved to California.
It's too.
Yeah.
I never got to go to the Pike. I never got to go to Pacific Ocean Park. 2 of them I wish I would have given anything to go to.
Yeah. And that's why places like Santa Cruz Beach Boardwalk are so important. I mean, another way to put the boardwalk is it's what Disney is attempting to evoke some thoughts and feelings and memories of for people that have been with what was the original, Paradise Pier, now Pixar Pier. Yeah. Although, and that even has a dark ride. That's where Toy Story Mania is. But this Bloody Castle, was that a Bill Tracy dark ride? Do you know, or was that someone else?
I have no idea.
Because Bill Tracy,
I don't think it was a Laugh in the Dark, like one of those. I think it was some really just low rent one-off. Somebody had a trailer. It probably wasn't very well kept. Right,
probably some clone kind of thing. Not not this. Yeah, right. That makes sense. Totally makes sense to why you're scared, what was going through you. You got on this ride, so talk to us what it was like being on the ride, and then once you got off, how you were thinking, how you were feeling.
Well, on the ride, you treat it like you're watching a scary movie, and that your instinct is to close your eyes and bundle up until it's over. Since I was born a cheapskate, I kept saying, well, I paid for this. I might as well get the full experience out of it if I'm going to pay for it. You end up bumping into these scenes where this buzzer goes off and this creature is lunging, or somebody's having their head chopped off. The motion of the car is just so herky-jerky that everything about it is discombobulating, everything about it. And it just ends up being this overload on your senses. But you know that everybody before you came out okay. Odds are I'm going to come out okay. I don't remember what movie it was, but every time they did something crazy, somebody would go, NPD, right? NPD, no permanent damage.
Right. Yeah, I don't know where that's from either. I think I've heard that, though, before. So are you saying, honestly, at 6 years old, you were actually thinking that, though, that, hey, these other people have already gotten off the ride and I'm at a fun place?
Dude, I was born 30. Are you kidding?
Interesting. Old soul kind of thing, right?
Oh, yeah. When I turned 21 or 22, I remember going into my garage, because we were moving from Norwalk to Buena Park. We moved right next to Knott's Berry Farm.
Oh, wow.
I remember opening a closet and finding, I'm not kidding, about 50 unopened Star Wars figures from my childhood. Because at some point I realized, I probably don't need these to play with, but they might be worth something later.
Wow. Yeah, and I just did the math, by the way. I wasn't in this earlier, because you said you started working at Knott's in 94.
Yeah.
So you're coming up just to 2-3 more years, and it'll be 30 years for you.
Oh, my God. Why would you say that?
Well, hey, we're talking about fear here and scary things, so right.
No, it's 30 really great years. I lucked into it. I really did. I was only going to work there for a short time, and then I discovered how much I liked it. And even though I wasn't making much money, I decided to stick with it.
Nice. That's awesome. That sounds like a true passion project, which we'll get excited to talk more about that here in a little bit. All right. Well, thanks for sharing about this bloody castle. Wow. That sounds pretty scary. Did you get off that ride? You're 6 years old. You've conquered it. Did riding that attraction and conquering that fear, did that impact your life in any way, in the near term, long term?
Well, it didn't impact it in that I wanted to go on a lot of rides after that. But I've never been, again, like I've said, I've never been a coaster guy, which when I tell people at a party, they're like, you work at a theme park? You don't go on coasters? Why would you do that? And I go, well, a lot of people who work at Ford don't drive Fords. So I don't know. I don't know what you can take from that. But I think subconsciously what it did was it showed me the power of what people will do to get scared. When I look back at some of the things I did in elementary school and in high school, they translate right into what I ended up doing with my life. So it's very interesting how it goes through that.
Interesting. Okay. So So really it inspired you to create to eventually want to create those experiences. Yeah. Wow. That's pretty powerful.
I do a podcast where I talk about my life and go into the movies, because everybody does a movie podcast, but mine is more about, hey, the movie's great, but here's what happened, when I went to see Back to the Future. It wasn't just about Back to the Future. Here's my adventures collecting Back to the Future. I've talked a lot about my personal crazy life on my podcast. And part of that is there was a moment in time where I lived in this bizarre, almost commune, like cult, like a lot of people in a small building. They were all crazy drunks, like just crazy as you can be. Like if I wrote it down, you wouldn't believe it. And one of them, this guy got a job as a night security guard at a factory that made front doors to houses. Right. Okay. So of course, he kept bringing home stolen front doors every night. He would bring home more front doors. Eventually, we had 100 front doors in our front yard, and people would stop and shop for doors. Like, oh, I'll take that one. Do you have any front doors with a little window? Like, you'll see where I'm getting to this. So in Halloween 1983, I used those doors to make a maze in my front yard where you had, I stacked them in a way that to get to the trick-or-treat station, you had to go this way and that way and then crawl under and then around the skeleton into the front door. So when I look back at stuff like that, it's almost too good to be true. It really happened.
I knew you were going somewhere with this, and because I know you're a great storyteller. So and that applies to doing an interview. It's about telling stories. So that is an amazing story. So that was your first ever haunt creation, I take it, right?
Yeah. The one that precedes it, I didn't have anything to do with, in that. It's funny because I was just talking to my brother. I have an older brother. He's 7 years older than me. So he's basically the next generation, the generation before me. And he's the generation that grew up listening to Black Sabbath and Led Zeppelin and that sort of thing. He ran with a bunch of guys who were really smart guys, electrical engineers, crazy psychedelic artists. In 1978, they got a house that no one was living in, 2 streets behind me in Norwalk, and they built a haunted house in it. One of those where you get a tour guide and he takes you to the haunted house. And I remember going through that and just oh my God, look at, the Haunted Mansion's great, but this is in my neighborhood. And they had chessboards with pieces that moved, and they had a Pepper's Ghost effect, and they had graves in the backyard with people reaching out of them. And then to me, the best part of it was they had people dressed up as Jawa with light up eyes from Star Wars, Darth Vader with a light up chest piece. That was my first whoa, Halloween's a lot more than trick-or-treating. Look at what you can do. The best part of that story is, it's all documented, which is insane to me. And my brother right now is trying to find any of the newspaper clippings that related, because the media covered it big time because it was a pretty big deal for 1978. But the guy who played Darth Vader that night was a guy named Richard Bonin.
Okay.
And he was arrested not long after that for being one of the freeway killers, which was a serial killer that terrorized Southern California in the 70s and killed quite a number of young men. And he was involved in the haunted house, and the FBI came to our house. It was pretty, scary on so many levels.
Wow, that's incredible. That's those of us, we're coming out of this pandemic. And, last year in the pandemic, of course, a lot of us stayed home more as we were supposed to, keeping safe and whatnot. One of the things that happened last year because of the pandemic is we, again, watched more TV. And of course, not everyone. I have met a few people that haven't, but a lot of us, myself included, watched Tiger King. You can, whatever your opinion may be of it. And of course, there's some really bad things that happen. It's one of those stories. It's not the only one because I've seen movies like this as well that are based on reality very closely where fact is stranger than fiction. Mm-hmm. And sometimes those true stories are some of those craziest and best stories. Fiction can be amazing. And fiction in a way is more difficult because, if you got this crazy true story, then you already know what the story is. You can adapt it and make it a movie, a play, a musical, whatever. But for someone like yourself, where you're creating these whole universes, these whole stories from scratch, maybe with a little inspiration here and there, it's even more, it's literally being creative and it's even more challenging. But that's a crazy story right there. The Freeway Killer. Wow.
I know it's absolutely, actually, you know what? Bonin was the main killer. And the guy that was Darth Vader was a guy named Vernon Butts. Yeah, that's his name, Vernon Butts. Hard to forget.
That's a crazy name. That's a crazy name.
He used to run around in a vampire cape and he slept in a coffin. On the weekends, they kidnapped and killed people. I mean, it's absolutely insane.
That's crazy out there. Wow. But what really happened, which makes it more powerful. Wow, that's insane. We talked about how Blood Castle inspired you at a very young age to eventually be doing what you're now doing. Would you say going a step beyond that as you got older and started going to parks and then eventually working in the parks as you do now, have theme parks had any kind of significant positive impact on your life? And in what ways have they?
Oh, well, obviously, yes, because
I've
put my whole life into
30 years, right?
30 years almost. But no, theme parks were growing up here in Southern California in the 1980s. I talked about how we couldn't afford Disneyland earlier in life. But when I became a teenager, I was at Disneyland a lot. There was a group called the Southern California Locals. Now, I wasn't part of that group because I'm frankly not that cool, but I did get to go to the Captain EO 60-hour party, the Star Tours 60-hour party, and got to go on Pirates of the Caribbean at 3 a.m. and Haunted Mansion at 4 a.m. and what rides can we go on where we can sleep. Those are some of the greatest times of my life. Being at Disneyland. Do you remember the exit to America the Beautiful Circle-Rama?
So the first time I ever went to Disneyland, just a quick background on me, because I've lived all over the country. I've moved around a bit. So I'm not like yourself, you've been in Southern California and, very intense, all this, obviously living in Southern California, like you have for years, you have all these experiences. So I grew up in New Jersey. So I grew up going to Disney World, with my parents. My grandparents lived in Florida, very, very stereotypical. I didn't move out to California until the late 90s, early 2000s. The first time I ever went to Disneyland was in November of 2001.
Wow. But I've never been to Disney World. There was no reason for me to go to Disney World.
Right. There you go.
I grew up with Disneyland, 2 exits down the freeway.
Right. Wow.
But
so you're asking about the exit.
Yeah.
So
the exit of that attraction, there were this is 1985, 86. There were these telephones that were giant cubes where you could go and sit in, and there was no receiver. You put the money in, you dialed, and it was a speaker. It was basically a speaker phone. There was nothing like that anywhere. So we'd always go in there and, hey, Mom, we're talking to you from a room. Everybody's here and can hear you. And those are priceless memories of. It seemed as if, going now, Disneyland seems quaint because I know how small it is compared to the other parks. But It seemed like when you were in Tomorrowland, you were in another world. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Just in another world. We would go on the People Mover, and it would go way out beyond the submarine ride on those tracks. And you feel like I'm the only person out here. I am enjoying this amazing place alone. I love those isolated moments of going to those parks. And then I also like having dinner with my mom at the Tomorrowland Terrace in the 90s Bengal barbecue. So you can, before, and this is when Disneyland had the California Select Pass, probably from 1991 till late 90s. It was $99 to go for a year. Everybody had a pass. Whenever there was a free moment, we went to Disneyland. My kids grew up at DCA. DCA was their home park. They get nostalgic talking about Superstar Limo, the Golden Dreams movie.
Yes.
not only have I worked at theme parks, but I have enjoyed going to theme parks my whole life. And because they're so ingrained as memories, they become so important. They become so important. They're part of your family stories. Like, remember that time? And next time we're going to go here and there, and really, really amazing stuff. I mean, it's hard. It's hard to put into words the nostalgia you have, because now that my parents are gone and everybody's grown up, the days all turn to sepia and they all get better than they were.
Right. Yeah, that's very well put, and I can hear the passion. And again, we are two theme park enthusiasts talking to each other, and I can very much relate. So the 60-hour parties, Jeff, were you actually there for that whole time? Did you go home and sleep and come back, or how did that work?
For the first one for EO, we went after school Friday, because it was Friday to Sunday. So we went after school Friday, and I think we must have come home Sunday afternoon. Oh yeah, wow. We were there a huge bulk of it. And then for the Star Tours one, I wasn't going to miss out, because I'm massive Star Wars fan.
Same.
I named my first kid Luke Skywalker. I mean, I'm not kidding around.
Wow.
Yeah, no joke.
Wow.
But I remember getting there a couple hours after they opened, and the line for Star Tours was at Great Moments with Mr. Lincoln. So, we got in it and rode it about 4 hours later, blown away by it.
Of course.
But we wouldn't get a second ride on it until 3 or 4 in the morning when people had finally left. But no, I was dedicated. I had been weaned on sci-fi conventions where this is the only time you're going to get to talk to people who like the things that you like. So we would spend all night in the hotel lobby talking with people about Star Wars and Battlestar Galactica and The Last Starfighter and Dreamscape and Goonies and Explorers and Gremlins and Big Trouble in Little China and all that. So
I love it. Again, big movie fan. You've mentioned some of my favorites like Dreamscape, Last Starfighter. A lot of these movies people have never seen. David, if you've never seen Last Starfighter, you got to see it. David's in the background producing. I think he's making notes. Wow. And I'm totally with you. I've been to conventions. I'm a sci-fi nerd. Probably wear that badge. I've been to, some of the bigger Comic-Con type things, so.
I've not been on Rise of the Resistance because you only had about a week here before everything got shut down. I didn't have time.
Yeah.
I did go to Galaxy's Edge on a cast member preview. I was fascinated because I was in modern day at a theme park where no one could have a cell phone because they made you put it away because there were no photos allowed. So everybody was living in the moment
and talking to each other.
Never going to happen again.
Right.
But having not been on Rise of the Resistance, I can tell you, to me, the greatest theme park attraction in the world, again, not having ridden that one, is Star Trek: The Experience at the Hilton, which is no longer there. That ride cost $35 to ride when it opened.
Yes.
And I went a lot, and it was worth every penny.
That was, to me, Vegas's modern heyday, when all these crazy resorts, the Mirage and the Luxor, New York, they were being built. And it was, it was the big golden age of Vegas. And with that, it wasn't just the gambling and the shows, which are great. Love the shows, by the way. But I've seen Siegfried and Roy a couple times. I'm so glad I did, because now we can't. But on top of all of that is dining experiences are great too, of course. But there's the family attractions. Coasters were being built. The Luxor had a great Star Tours style dark ride. Yeah, that was really cool. Yeah.
Search for the Obelisk.
Yes. So well done. I mean, again, ahead of its time in terms of the motion.
That was Douglas Trumbull, the guy who did Back to the Future, the ride.
Oh, not surprising at all, given how well it was done. Wow. I'm a huge sci-fi fan, Star Wars, Star Trek equally. I love them both. And when I heard about the Star Trek experience opening at the Las Vegas Hilton next to the convention center, I'm like, oh, I'm there. And I was going to Vegas several times a year. And so I think it was in 97, I think, or 96 when it opened. But I wound up going several times. And yeah, $35 back in the mid 90s. But you know what? And I know you're going to agree with this. Worth every penny.
Oh, yeah.
But I got to tell you about something. We're going to take the theme park time machine there and go back to the mid 90s, 30 years ago, and almost 30 years ago, Star Trek experience, because it was so ahead of its time in that with the immersion and the special effects, the transporter effect, that bridge, the Enterprise D bridge, holy cow. Yeah. And now, of course, all the people in costume. And of course, they had their own kind of Star Tours, the shuttle attraction, and I mentioned the Borg attraction. They had you exit and you were right there on Deep Space Nine with Quark's bar, and it looks just like the show. So well done. And I'm sure that Scott Trimble and his team, involved with creating Galaxy's Edge, that they were inspired by the Star Trek experience.
Well, yeah, if you're going to build an attraction in modern day, you have to have some allegiance to Gary Goddard, who revolutionized the industry with landmark entertainment. I mean, the stuff he did is amazing. Star Trek: The Experience was just, oh my God, it was so immersive. It was so good that when I was putting Trapped Year 3 together, I said, look, if you're going to steal from the best.
Right.
The original opening of Star Trek: The Experience, you paid your $35, you got in line, and when you got to the ride itself, they had a very sloppy older woman operating. It was always the same type of frumpy, welcome to Star Trek: The Experience. Line up here. Because it looked like Star Tours. It had the little doors.
Yes.
It had a TV, and it said, please watch this safety video. And I'm telling you, the first time I went, I was pissed beyond belief. I said, this is cheap looking. They ought to be ashamed of themselves. And then the safety video plays, and there's a guy with his pregnant wife, and they go, pregnant women should not ride. So the wife leaves, and the guy goes, and he gets on the ride, and the woman goes, what a nice gentleman. And I'm like, she's even commenting on the television. Like, I hate everything about this. And then, of course, everything goes haywire. The lights go out, the air whooshes in a vacuum, and when the lights come on, you're on the Enterprise. And I went, oh, I got. And I got
me too.
In a big way. When it came time to do Trapped, when you went in for year 3, you waited in this little waiting room, and you were met by this woman dressed like a flight attendant. She had, a very crisp uniform and a neckerchief and a little hat. And she'd go, hello, welcome to Trapped. And she'd give you the rules like, oh, this is terrible. She doesn't even know her lines. They had little cue cards to read their lines off of. The night we did executive previews, the top guy at the farm was there. He went through and he was on his phone. And as that girl is walking them to where you actually enter the attraction, I'm fired. He had told me this. He said, at that moment, Jeff, you were fired because where'd the money go? What did you do?
Right.
You had a week of rehearsal. So what happens is that girl goes behind, she goes, please wait on the line. And then she goes behind a wall. Instantly, like in a magic trick, she comes out and now she's a dominatrix and she is screaming at you and yelling at you and you're totally off base. My top boss said, you got me. You were fired up until that moment. And then basically you're getting a promotion. And I said, you got to hang in there. There's always a surprise. Again, I totally homage to Star Trek: The Experience.
That's so cool. I love that story. And again, having such a fondness for the Star Trek experience, as a theme park fan, as a Star Trek fan, and then the nostalgia is so strong. Yeah.
Do you remember the original
awesome.
Ending before they changed it? Because Star Trek had 2 endings.
It's been over 20 years, almost 25. So
the first ending was absolutely brilliant. The ride ends with Geordi LaForge setting the shuttle down next to the simulators. That's in the film of the ride. He goes, I'm going to set you down next to those simulators. And so you can see like a curved screen showing Deep Space Nine, and then you land next to what looks like a simulator. So when the doors open, the Enterprise shuttle bay is gone. And instead, it's all industrial. There's trash cans, and there's a guy sweeping. And he turns and he goes, who the hell are you guys? How the hell did you get? This is a restricted area. You need to leave immediately. And you're like, what? So then he escorts you out. Then you're on the promenade of DS9. I think they got complaints that people were so jarred by that because they softened the ending to like you watched a television of a sighting of a UFO over Area 51. Sources are saying that it's a spaceship above the Vegas Strip. It was all, I get it. I know why they had to do it, but boy, that original ending was so dynamite.
Yeah, I mean, it's crazy. And again, for anyone listening, even if you're not a Star Trek fan, even if you hate Star Trek and you haven't heard about this, you never experienced this, look it up, Google it. Fortunately, this is back in 98, January 98 is when it opened. So this is just at the beginning of digital photography. Digital cameras were just starting to come out. This is long before smartphones. So you're probably not going to be able to find much on YouTube, maybe, but you'll be able to find stories and a lot of people reminiscing, and the nostalgia factor is huge there. It was so ahead of its time to the point where in many ways, it wasn't until Rise of the Resistance opened, or perhaps some of that Potter stuff as well, where we really were seeing something at that level again. I mean, Star Trek Experience was so unique and so special, and it's sad that it only lasted 10 years.
Right.
I would
Does Star Trek The Experience, this is a question for the listeners because they would know more than I would. Does Star Trek The Experience begin the era of the audience member being part of the story? Like, you're not a passive observer in any way.
Right.
You are part of the story. One of you is Picard's relative. And if you don't survive, Picard doesn't survive. And I'm sure there's probably an attraction before that had that, but not on that scale. Not like you're the whole reason we're here. Yes, exactly. And Rise of the Resistance gets into that to some degree where you're so immersed into it. I mean, Jeff, a quick side thing, but you and I, we talk on Facebook and Facebook Messenger. Just when you get on Rise finally, you got to tell me what you thought of it. Oh, absolutely. As a fan of a Star Trek Experience, big sci-fi fan, both of us, if you love Star Trek Experience, you're going to love Rise. It is, it's like that plussed up 25 years of technology later Star Trek Experience in the other big universe. So. The idea that I'm going to be able to see basically a full-size AT-AT, the toy that I had as a kid. A couple of them. It was one of my favorite toys. That's enough. I mean, I saw them being built. So I was like Marty McFly looking at the truck. Someday, Jennifer, someday. I hope to eventually have him on the podcast, by the way. That Rise of Resistance has a very personal meaning for me and it's importance to me. My nephew he's brilliant. He's just going out to MIT here in a couple months for graduate school. He's working at JPL right now. He was an Imagineer intern for a year, and he worked on the animatronics for Rise. He didn't get to tell me that until recently because he couldn't disclose, but yeah. Can he confirm or deny that Kylo Ren is the Wicked Witch of the West? Okay, what do you mean by that? I don't get the reference. I mean, I know Wicked Witch of the West. Inquiring minds want to know. There have been side-by-side comparisons of the Wicked Witch from the Great Movie Ride and Kylo Ren, and that it's the same figure. I'll ask him. He probably could tell me that. Yeah. That's interesting. Yeah. So that was a fun little kind of aside there. But yeah, listeners, again, if you don't like Star Trek, check out the Star Trek Experience. And it is my hope, just one last comment on this before we move on, and I know you work for Knott's and Knott's, is a lot of high theme, but you guys don't necessarily do it necessarily a lot where you get into the licensed IP stuff, like say Disney, Universal do. So I would think that Universal will be the one to most likely do it to compete with Disney. I would love to see Universal get that license from Viacom and do something with Star Trek. Can you imagine what Universal could do with modern technology competing against Disney? The problem I would have with it is that Universal seems to be addicted to screens. I know. It gets really old after a while. Like, I thought that the Minions ride was a ride. And when I walked in, I'm like, oh, it's another set of screens. And don't even get me started on I'm putting air quotes up, Fast and Furious ride. Yeah. I'll buy Vin Diesel hanging from a single person helicopter as reality before I'll buy that you can race on LA freeways that fast. Yeah, the Fast and the Furious, because I'm a huge Universal fan. That's one of my home parks here in Orlando. I love going there. I'm there almost every week. I don't know if it's because Disney has exclusivity still. I doubt it. But the test track technology that they developed with dynamic attractions, that's what Universal should have used. Why isn't that a Fast and Furious ride? Right, absolutely. Or the stuff that they did for the Mario Kart ride that I've seen. That looks amazing. Real quick, you talk about Universal Studios. I have such a soft spot for Universal, even though I never went there as a kid. Again, we had no money for that kind of stuff. After Back to the Future came out in 1985, I became obsessed, not only with the film itself, how it was made, where it was made, I've never had an urge to want to climb into a movie screen like I did with Back to the Future. In 86 and 87, 88, my friends and I actually would go into Universal's overnight, hang out around the sets at like 2 or 3 in the morning. Really? You would sneak in is what you're saying? Which is odd because it's so out of character for me, but we couldn't afford to go. And riding the tour tram is not the same. We actually went in right after Part 1 was released. So I have pictures of me on the clock tower, on the steps of the clock tower, inside Lou's Cafe. Wow. And then the big thing was during Back to the Future, the filming of 2, we figured out how to get in during the middle of the day. I have pictures of me at the Cafe 80s. at the Clock Tower Mall. I used to wave at the trams as they went by. I got to live out my dream of being in Hill Valley.
That's incredible. And I'm not going to ask you how you did it. I don't want to get you in trouble or anything. I'll just leave it at that.
I wrote a book about it, so it's not really
you wrote a book about it?
Yeah.
Really? So have you, I mean, obviously you work in the industry. Have you talked to anyone at Universal, or has anyone talked to you about what happened and just kind of joked about it, or has they contacted you? Or?
It's so long ago. The stuff that I got to see, it all burned down. If I hadn't done it back then, it's not possible. Everything now is a replica. I tried to sell that book one time at a convention, and I had a whole display of Back to the Future stuff on my table and copies of the book. And the picture on the cover is me in front of the Cafe 80s. Like, there's no doubt I am on the set. I had a couple of people say, well, I don't understand. You're on the set of this movie. You're willing to just put this out here? And I looked at him. I said, you think they're going to come get me? I said, it was 1989. It's been quite a while. I think anybody who worked there is probably dead.
Right.
I said, but they're welcome to come get me if that's how they feel about it. I treated Back to the Future and the sets and the buildings like a museum. So we were there to look and not touch.
You were being very respectful,
I have never carved my initials in anything. I used to put up JAT on the high score of Phoenix and asteroids, but that's about it. I'm not that guy.
Gotcha. Yeah, I am also like, because I've gotten to go to very special events at theme parks, behind the scenes. I've done Hollywood Nights recently. I've done ACE events at other parks. Even I've done ACE events at Knott's, actually. But I also, because Coaster Challenge, we are somewhat of an influencer, very just getting started. But we have a YouTube channel. We've done that for a long time now with a podcast. We're on media lists, and we love our relationship with the parks, including Knott's, by the way. We're very proud of our relationship with Knott's. I've gone to media events for construction tours. David has as well, for coasters, Six Flags and SeaWorld parks, things like that. And I've gotten to write my name on the support for a coaster as it's being built. But again, that is all they ask you to do. That you can do it, sanctioned.
Yeah.
And so I'm very excited. The first time, I think the only time I've got to do that was at Icebreaker here in Orlando. Whenever it opens finally, I can say, hey, my name is on this ride. But anyway, so.
At the highest point of Batu, it says 91 Reasons, because I have a friend who works at Disney who put it right on there. So.
Oh, that's cool. Yeah. Oh, yeah. I remember when the cast members were doing that. I remember hearing about that years ago. Yeah. While you were talking there, I was thinking about when the first time I went to Universal Hollywood was in '86. And of course, Back to the Future, the ride wasn't open yet because it was 85, which I already knew was when the first movie came out. It was 91. And I know this because I have a Made to Thrill poster. I have 9 of them on my wall, and a grid of 9 of them. And one of them is the Back to the Future ride. And because I'm a huge Back to the Future fan.
See, I have photos from the opening day of Back to the Future, the ride, because I went there in costume as Marty Jr. from Part 2 with the jacket and the shoes and everything.
Yeah.
Because of contractual obligations and the way nobody signed on the dotted line, they've never had a Marty McFly in the park, only a Doc. So I have pictures of me with Doc and where people are going crazy because there's never been a Marty, and that was opening day.
That's really cool. Wow. Okay. Well, that was a great couple tangents there. I love it. So, but let's come back to what we want to talk about here and the actual kind of questions I want to ask you, because we have some fun things to talk about there. Obviously, my last question was about asking you about how theme parks had a significant impact on your life. And obviously you've spent all this time, these 60-hour parties, working now for almost 30 years in the industry. I want to kind of follow up with a more specific question. Have theme parks, being involved with them, being immersed in them and these attractions, have they enriched your life? Have they made your life better? And I don't just mean it having fun. I mean it on a more serious level. Have they maybe helped you through some tough times? Have they given you a better quality of life, psychologically speaking, that sort of thing?
Well, I don't think anybody can say that it hasn't. You go to parks and you remember, going with someone who's not there anymore. I remember you're a big fan of Doug and the gang over at Season Pass.
Yeah,
and they did some Mice Age podcast for a while.
Yes.
There was a turn of a phrase that Dusty put up one time where he said, remember that every time you go to Disneyland, it's somebody's first trip.
Yes.
It's also somebody's last trip.
Yeah.
I never thought about that.
I've heard him say that.
Yeah, no, it's very touching and very poignant. The midways of Knott's Berry Farm are soaked in memories for me because I've spent so much of my life there. I was a guest there for years as a kid. My mother liked it over Disneyland because it was cheaper and there was more antique shopping. So we used to go there quite a bit. We used to go to the steakhouse all the time. Having worked there and spent huge amounts of my life there, and I renewed my wedding vows on Ghost Rider as part of one of the coaster events.
Oh, that's so cool.
Like I've done everything, it sounds like I'm Rutger Hauer in Blade Runner, I've seen people on rides during the thunderstorms off the moons of Jupiter, but I've made lifelong friends this past weekend, we drove 2 hours up the coast to hang out with somebody I haven't seen in years who we were storytellers together at Mystery Lodge. And it was like no time had passed, Oh yeah. Theme parks, that's where it is, man. For someone like me, that's where it is.
They're central to your life. Absolutely.
Oh,
of course. You work there, you love them. I love my career as an engineer and I'm very proud of it. And for a lot of people, myself included, our work is what enables the play. And one of my biggest life adages I live by, idioms, if you will, is work hard, play hard. And I do love my work and I've gotten to travel. I'm very fortunate. I've gotten to go to so many theme parks overseas and whatnot, as I mentioned earlier. But my work that I do, it's not a passion for me. It's an enabler of passion. But so I have so much respect for someone like yourself who your work is your passion.
Well, I appreciate that. When I was in college, I was a big theater guy, obviously. I worked pretty closely with a guy named David, who we just clicked instantly. We got each other's humor. We understood where we were going in a scene just by a glance. He's currently a big guy up in entertainment at Disneyland, at DCA. It's funny when we get together because we're the only ones out of our class that are still doing what we wanted to do. And there's a lot of satisfaction in that of like, well, I get to do theater. And I've had people tell me like, well, you should move to this small town here. It's not like California, but we have an amusement park right here. And I go, no, you're misunderstanding me. I work at a multiple group of theaters and they happen to be in a theme park.
Right.
So I actually work in theater. It's on a different level and scale, and the needs might be a little different. Like we're not doing Shakespeare, but we're still doing theater. And if it works, then everybody wins in it, and I'm proud of like David's work is so amazing what he does. I'm proud of what I do. And I'm proud that we get together. We're like, hey, we're the last ones, who decided to stick in it.
That's really cool. That's awesome. That's awesome. For me, the reality is, there are literally thousands of people just here in the US that work at theme parks, perhaps even hundreds of thousands, if you consider all the parks. But on the creative side, the management side, like yourself, probably maybe hundreds, thousands, whether it be, what you do in your team at Knott's or Universal Creative, at Imagineering, Disney, et cetera. You guys live and breathe it. And I'm sure the vast majority of those people are theme park fans. So they're living their passion, it's all that. But for the majority of us, the millions just here in the US that love going to the parks and, even millions of very passionate enthusiasts, we just get to go to the parks and experience them and entertain ourselves. And we're not living and breathing them necessarily. Some go every day. I don't. Mm-hmm. I got too much other stuff going on, too many other interests and whatnot. For me, it's the entertainment, it's the immersion, it's the nostalgia, it's everything. But it's also the theme park therapy. So, but for someone like yourself, I'm sure, again, you have so much positivity from the theme parks, but you're living and breathing it. You're there every day, like you said, 364 days a year. So yeah, that's incredible. So Jeff, I want to kind of switch gears here, kind of in the second half of the interview. And this is, I'm so excited to talk to you about this. You and I, we've talked about Disney. We've talked about Knott's a little bit. We've talked about Universal a lot. But I really want to talk about Knott's a lot here, because of course, that's where you work. You've worked there for almost 30 years. And Knott's is one of my beloved parks. It used to be one of my home parks, as I said at the beginning. Knott's Berry Farm is a very unique park. And, for those that have been there, some may not even realize that, it's one of the oldest parks. It's very much older than Disney. In fact, Knott's inspired Walt Disney to do a lot of things he did at Disneyland, having been to that park himself. A lot of people know Knott's to have some challenges, kind of being landlocked on all sides by neighborhoods. And you guys have to continually work with just the space you have available. And you guys do an amazing job with that and continue to innovate with shows, with attractions. One of the ways that I've been very impressed with, I've never got to experience this myself, but being a theme park fan, I listen to a lot of podcasts. I've got a lot of friends that are in California, like David, that have experienced these things. The Ghost Town Alive, turning one of your beloved themed lands at Knott's Berry Farm into an attraction of itself that's immersive. So brilliant. Now, were you involved in that yourself?
Well, no, the creation of Ghost Town Alive it was a big team that I was a little tiny piece of.
Okay.
No, that was the brainchild of the guy who just left entertainment, Ken Parks. He moved up in the corporate level to work on a whole nother level of projects. I was there at the very beginning of Ghost Town Alive. I was there at the initial meetings where a lot of people said, this is never going to work. This is asking too much of the guests. It seems too weird and too touchy-feely. I was sitting in the meeting saying, I can't wait to see it work. Let's see if it can work. One of my contribution to Ghost Town Alive was given to me as like a challenge. Can this be done? And part of it was they wanted to have the guests are activated. I mean, I'm the last guy to talk about Ghost Town Alive because, again, my stuff is so disconnected from the actual mechanics of it. Part of it is engaging the guests and instantly, like that, getting them involved. And how the actors do it, they have all these tricks up their sleeves. But my trick that I provide is they'll ask them, can you take a letter from here to the guy over there at the blacksmith? They wanted all these letters that would be in character, written from character to character, or from character to somebody outside of town, or from somebody outside of town into town, and they had to go building to building. So I had all these graphs. I actually put it on my wall at my office. I had all these charts. It looked like, you ever seen that meme of the guy from It's Always Sunny in Philadelphia where he's pointing at the wall with all the strings? That's what my office looked like. During the creation of those letters, most of my thinking is late at night. I stare at the wall and I go, wait a minute. And I called Ken and I said, there's no computer program that will do this. These letters will have to be handwritten, every single one of them. He said, yeah, I didn't thought about that. I went, and you know what? In 7th grade, I learned calligraphy. And nice. I never thought it was going to matter in real life. And I went to Michael's and I bought a whole box of calligraphy pens and ink. And I spent months writing every single letter by hand, making sure that they're in different penmanship. They each tell a story. They're in the storyline of the Ghost Town Alive story of the day. The dates match, the characters match. And I was so proud of all those letters. And then, you know what we discovered? God bless children. They're not going to read a letter that's for somebody else. Most of them are delivered intact to the character. We had backups for all the letters because I thought, people are just going to take them. It's a free souvenir. Kids are like, no, you can't take this. This is the mail.
They treat it serious. Yeah.
Oh, absolutely. And when that happened, I went, Ken has discovered it. I mean, this is amazing. The only drawback to any of Ghost Town Alive I can think of is that everybody who went to Galaxy's Edge when it opened, that's what we were expecting because that's what was sold at D23.
Yeah.
It's not quite what they do. And logistically, I get why they don't do it. But man, Ghost Town Alive is so amazing, so immersive, and so you have kids who spend 6 hours there and never go on rides. They live in Ghost Town for the day. You want to talk about therapy? Again, not my thing. I take zero credit. Ken got letters from parents who said, my autistic child has never spoken. And after Ghost Town Alive, he or she talks.
Oh, wow.
And we're reading these letters and we're just crying our eyes out.
Oh,
because
wow.
Who would have thought? Who would have thought? But here's the kicker. Kids love to play. And that's how they spend 90% of their day loving to play. But most adults won't play with them. They're too busy. There's too much to do.
Right.
The people of Ghost Town Alive, that's all they want to do is play with the people who come. So the kids are just, oh my God, it's real. This guy is real to me. And that's light years beyond anything I could have expected.
That's amazing. And I love your humbleness because as you kind of let in there, you were a small piece, but I love your piece of that. That's so cool. The letters and that's, you should be proud. You said you're proud. You should be. That is so amazing. The
second year, we did it because we've done it a few years now, and I've written every letter, every telegram. I sat down and I wrote the letters. We talked about the storylines and who was going to talk to who. I wrote all the letters, and then Ken goes, well, it's the next year, Jeff. So you have to go up 1 year. So I brought all the letters home and spent all weekend figuring out how to change the dates on all the letters. And I'll never forget, like, oh, we have a weekend to do it. It was great. It was. I'm very proud of that work. I'm also proud that the attraction is so amazing that most people don't even notice that it's there. And that's
right, because
it's organic.
Right, exactly. It's organic. It's not like it's like, oh, okay, oh, they're doing this thing. You have to line up for it, and you get a special badge for. No, it's integrated, and that's the brilliance of it. Yeah, and I'm glad you told it. This wasn't even something I was going to even ask you about. I was just thinking about it. That's why I brought it up. I'm so glad I did, because some of the things you talked about there, that autistic child, that is core to our mission, and I love that you guys. It's not even a new attraction, so to speak, where it's a physical coaster or a ride, or it's a specific show in a show building. It's a unique attraction unto itself. It's making a land immersive. That itself, you guys have made a difference in people's lives. That is incredible. Yeah.
The other really great story that was relayed to me was there was a family that came to Knott's. They had planned the trip all year. Right before they came to the park, they lost their house. They were evicted from their house. They were foreclosed on.
Oh.
And instead of canceling the trip, they came out here. I think they stayed in a trailer, and they stayed 6 weeks, and they lived Ghost Town alive the entire summer. They reported that it was the most family bonding thing they had ever done in their lives. If you've ever been to Ghost Town alive on the last day, Labor Day, Monday, or whatever it ends around that week, they always have some big event that sets in motion the story for the next year. And if you look around, it looks like summer camp is ending. People are crying. They're elated that they were part of it. They're sad to see it go and saying goodbye to people. And like, for a moment, it feels real. How can you predict something like that?
Right.
It's really, really amazing. Really, it's a really special thing to be a part of. And like I said, I'm just a small part of it.
Wow. But like you said, in the planning meetings, you were one of the people that was kind of looking at things positively. Like, I want to experience this. I can't wait. We got to do this. This is going to be awesome. It's going to be great.
Oh,
and look at how great it is. Yeah.
One of my missions in life is to push the envelope of what people expect, to make it more immersive, how can we make it more real? I talked about that plant that we had in Trap, that girl. There were times when, if the line got too long, I would grab one of those actresses and we would walk through the lobby of the attraction while she cried. And I would say, "We'll find your boyfriend. I know he's in there somewhere." And people would their eyes would get really big, like, what's going on in there? And I wanted just a little bit of chaos, controlled chaos. Is it real? Is it not? One of my heroes growing up was Willy Wonka, Gene Wilder. You always looked at him like, this guy's gonna get killed, but is he in control or is he not? And if I can just have 1% of that in my real life, then I've won.
Yeah, basically blurring the lines between reality and fiction. And yeah, that's awesome. I love it. I love that edge that you got there. So one last question, and this is purely for personal reasons on Ghost Town Alive. So is Ghost Town Alive only going on in the summer? Is that how it works?
Yeah, Ghost Town Alive is our summer event. We didn't do it last year. We didn't do it this year because of the pandemic, but I'm hoping it's back next year.
Okay, so I won't get to do it this year, but yeah, I mean, I plan to. Knott's is one of my favorite parks. It's not like I'm only going to hopefully go this year if I can make it this year.
Well, if you come this year, I'll make you deliver letters and you can I'll make you do all kinds of tasks.
Deal. So help you with your job, probably. Yeah. You'll talk me into feeling like I'm being immersed, but I'm really just helping you get things done. I got it. Mm-hmm. Got it.
It's like Tom Sawyer and the Fence, like Huck Finn.
Love it. So Ghost Town Alive, again, has been very well received. It's been going on for a few years now, and it's an example of high level of storytelling and immersion at Knott's. And again, to your point, a lot of us who've been to Galaxy's Edge, it's fun. But when the Ronto Wrap was one of my favorite things, at least until Rise of the Resistance opened there, and the Ronto Wrap is legit. It says something. And again, they're beautiful lands, but I don't feel, other than the attractions, I don't feel like I'm in the Star Wars universe there. Now, I'm in Diagon Alley. When I'm in Hogsmeade, I'm looking for Harry around the corner.
Yeah.
Disney. Now, the good news is that this isn't the rides are awful. This isn't, the theme, the land doesn't, it looks cheap. It's a problem that they can fix where it's not an industrial challenge. They don't have to rebuild things. They've got to put characters in. They've got to maybe do some interactive things. So I'm hopeful that they will be able to improve things. And there's a lot of rumors about what they're going to do and the Mandalorian and this and that. Who cares if the timeline's off? It's a theme park. Get over it, people. It's fine. Suspend disbelief. That's what theme parks are all about. But anyways, I'm hopeful they'll improve that. But yeah, to your point, your friendly, quote unquote, competition neighbors, quote unquote, across the street there over in Anaheim from Buena Park, they could learn a few things from Ghost Town Alive. Absolutely.
Well, again, if you go back and watch the D23 presentation, the stuff they promise is amazing. They promise like you're going to go into the cantina and get a drink, and then somebody's going to come up to you and go, look, can you deliver this to the resistance? Here's a little communication. And then you're going to go out back and there's going to be a back alley where these guys are looking for. I mean, they promise so much. And unfortunately, logistically, I get why they can't do it. There's just too many people running through.
Right.
I totally get it.
Right.
But it is rough that it's not there,
and I'm right there with you. I've been to conventions before. I've been to one D23 when I lived in California, when I really got to Disney in the later from like 2016 and beyond. And ever since, I really got to Disney. So Ghost Town Alive shows the tremendous creativity and industry-leading capabilities of you and everyone else at Knott's in your storytelling and in your immersion. That is far, far from the first time that Knott's has been an industry leader. I am, besides being a fan of coasters, besides being a fan of theme parks in general, and dark rides and water rides and drop towers and all those kinds of fun things and the shows, the first theme park haunt that I ever went to where I was wowed beyond all belief and felt the immersion and felt like, okay, yeah, I've been to this theme park before because it's in a theme park, but it's like, this is not that theme park anymore. Between the mist effects, the fog, the lighting, the sound, the music, and that was Knott's Scary Farm in 2001. I call haunts that are well done, like a Knott's Scary Farm or a Halloween Horror Nights at Universal, super immersion. It's not just, oh, okay, yeah, I feel like I'm in Star Wars or this or that. It's a whole experience that's just this upon this upon this upon this. I'm a huge fan of Knott's Scary Farm. I've gone many times. Jeff, I know part of what you do, and the reason why we're talking a lot about haunts here for the last part of this interview is because, we're releasing this interview here in our haunt season, our inaugural haunt season for the Coaster Challenge podcast. And I got to talk to you about this stuff. You're a big fan, you're a big creator, of course, and an artist. Tell us the process, just the general process of how it works of creating a theme park haunt attraction, like, for example, like a maze.
Well, I can only speak to what I've worked on, and that was when I worked on Trapped. That's my big maze contribution because I'm not a maze designer.
Okay, sure.
Those guys have a set of skills I couldn't even dream of possessing. It's very, it sounds exciting and glamorous, but it's actually very tedious and very exacting.
Oh, I can imagine. Yeah.
But I have contributed a lot of ideas over the years. When I talk about Trapped, me and this guy Gus, who worked together on year 3, we talk about, we did a whole presentation at a convention. I remember in the early 2000s, 2005 or 6, I was reading an article in the paper, and it was about this Halloween attraction in New York. And it was a Halloween attraction for adults where you went in and it was like a guided tour, and the rooms were all very specific and they each had a scene in them that was disturbing. The stuff they were describing was not anything I was interested in, but I did like the concept of small groups. And one of the concerns we've gotten over the years at Scary Farm is, well, it's not scary because we're in a conga line and I can see 5 people up, somebody getting scared. They've always tried to balance the metering of the mazes. And I said, well, what if we just went the complete other way and said, if a group goes in, you don't see any other groups ever. You have to go in a room and it closes, and whatever happens in that room happens, and then you get to move on to the next one. For years, they said, it's never going to work. Stop. No one's ever going to pay extra after they pay for their ticket. And I just kept beating the drum. I'd always raise my hand. They go, oh, there's Tucker with his stupid idea again. And then finally, for the 40th, we were asked, what are the crazy ideas? Because we need to do something unique. And I was like, I'm going to pitch it again. And that's when they said, let's see how far we can take it. That was when we said, look, okay, great. Let's do stuff we could never do in a regular Scary Farm attraction. And that's, make you eat something, make you figure out a puzzle, make you watch a disturbing scene that you don't get out of, scene ends. And that's where Trapped sort of was born, this crazy idea of what if, see, I'm the entertainment guy. What if we didn't do a show in this venue and instead we put a maze in this venue, but all the actors that we would have hired for that show are now in the maze. And they're doing a specific thing. And that's where it all sort of meshed together into this bizarre new type of attraction. By year 3, we had perfected it, and Gus did some of his best work on it. I did my best work on it. And it was completely immersive. And we learned all these lessons in it of, if you go in a maze where they tell you, well, the house is haunted and it's full of ghosts, then like, oh, I can't wait to see some ghosts in that. Trapped didn't get any of that. Trapped had to be almost real world danger. Things that are really going to hurt you in this thing. It's not supernatural in any way. So it caused everybody to think of new ways. Some of the stuff that they let us get away with, even I was shocked. Somebody in the room had an idea for the finale, because I wanted to do something really special for the finale. He said, well, why don't we hang everybody? And I said, well, they're never going to let us do that. There just aren't. When that attraction opened, the finale was you got to pull the lever and hang the plant lady we were talking about who was walking through the maze alone.
Yeah.
You pulled the lever and killed her. And the curtain opened, and now there was enough nooses for everybody in your party. So everybody got stood up at a rail, a black sack over their head, a noose over their neck, the music built, and the floor dropped. It was astounding. We had people wet themselves. We had people run in terror. It was really, really amazing. Absolutely.
That is incredible. I so regret that I never got to experience that. I just wasn't going to Knott's Scary Farm those years because of where I was in my life and where I was living and whatnot. Wow. Again, I love immersion. I've explored out and done more haunts in recent years as I've gotten more and more into the theme park side of things, where I'm actually I don't work in the industry, but I cover the industry much more than I used to. And now with this podcast and our YouTube channel before it. And I've gone to more independent haunts like Streamageddon out here in not too far from Orlando, out towards Busch Gardens, Tampa, where the independent haunts tend to be edgier, where at least you have the option, you have to wear a necklace or something where it lets the people know when you're going through the maze. And I did opt in for this immersion where they can touch you. And there's this one maze they have there, which is like a jail. But it's like a medieval jail, and the actors will throw you in jail and make you do things like you talked about earlier. You're going to make me take letters from one place to another, Jeff. Well, they made you do things in the jail cell, and I love that level of immersion. There was another one where they would put you in body bags. It was like a virus themed sort of thing, like your spec ops, your special ops infected kind of themed mazes with that sort of horror, if you will, like a Walking Dead kind of thing. And they would put you in body bags and zip you up and for a few minutes or whatnot. I love that kind of edgy where where you're actually interacting with a guest. Because normally in mazes, no one's touching anything. Yeah. You don't touch the scare actors. They don't touch you. And so you've got props and people. So sadly, I can imagine as we're hopefully in the sunsetting of this pandemic now with the vaccines and science works and everything like that, which is great. But still, the Delta variant's going on and who knows where we're going to be, and all that. But so sadly, having people touching props, that's a no-no right now. Yeah, of course. But maybe eventually we can get back to that. I would love to experience something like that. And brilliant combining an escape room and a haunt maze into one. So that was your idea?
Yeah, that was my idea.
That's incredible. I tip my hat to you. That's absolutely brilliant.
The first one was 9 years ago. This is 2012.
That's insane.
It was a different world back then. And we had to come up with all of these. There's a guy I just idolized. You ever heard of William Castle?
Yeah. Who is that?
William Castle made some of the worst B movies ever made. But he added things to the theatrical experience that made the movie better, even though the movies are terrible. For one of his movies, he had an ambulance in the lobby with a nurse sitting in it. So if somebody had a heart attack.
Yeah, I've heard of this.
He did the Tingler, where the seat would vibrate. He did House on Haunted Hill, where skeletons would be flown through the audience. They did a movie about him called Matinee with John Goodman, directed by Joe Dante.
Yes.
So I love all of the theatrics about it. So when we did Trapped, I said, look, if we're going to steal from the best, William Castle. So Trapped had a waiver that you had to sign to go in.
Of course.
We were the first person to do that. And it's funny because if you read the waiver, it was the verbiage of the waiver to go into Wonka's factory. Like it was all it was all silly. But the waiver made people sit up and notice, like, oh, this is hardcore. And then it'd be hard to do now. But back in 2012, we said you can't bring your cell phone out. If you bring your cell phone out, you're out. And there's no pictures, no footage, no video cameras. And if you go through, try not to tell anybody. And that's the really infancy of social media. So whenever somebody would ask on social media, the answer they got was, hey, I'm in a club. And the club is, we paid for it. If you want to know what's in there, you go pay for it. And now, I don't think you get away with any of that.
Yeah, that's sad. Yeah, I get it. I totally agree with you, though. The waiver, it had all that kind of nonsensical stuff, but was it just showmanship, or was there a real reason to have people sign the waiver as well? Was there some aspects of it?
No, it was all fake.
It was all fake. Oh, that's hilarious. That's great.
I don't have any legal right to have you sign a waiver.
Right.
I was always shocked that people took it so seriously.
Right.
Yeah, no, it's all fake.
And how much was the upcharge for it?
It was $60 for a party of 6.
Wow. For $6 total or per person?
Total.
Oh, that's awesome.
It had to be enough that you wouldn't skip out on it because we were holding your space, but it had to be inexpensive enough that you wanted to go. How I assumed it would work out is on the opening weekend, everybody would be sitting in their monster costumes having a smoke break, and I'd walk in and go, hey, somebody's here. Let's turn everything on. And instead, that Thursday, I went and spoke to somebody, and they said, oh, no, Jeff, you're sold out for the weekend. Every spot. And I said, you guys you can't do that. We don't know what we're doing yet. You can't be sold out.
Oh, my gosh. Oh, crazy.
And there was a surprising number of people who paid this $60 to go through alone.
Oh, so people could do that. They could have the option of going to, that would be
$60
intense.
And whatever you do with that slot, either 1 or 6 is up to you.
Oh,
that's how it worked.
Because I love escape rooms. I've done those. We have some great ones here in Florida, like Escapeology. Wow.
Yeah. It wasn't really an escape room. It was more of a solo group experience, if that makes sense. There were tasks to do in the rooms, but there was no way for you in the room to complete a task and get out before we decided you needed to get out, if that makes sense.
Right. No, I get it. It's not like a full on hour puzzle thing, but it sort of has some of those elements where you're in a room but it felt
group. Like that. Yeah. Because year 3 you had to have a set of keys, and some of the keys worked on some things. They didn't work on other things. And there was a lot of red herrings. There were locked doors that looked like they led somewhere. So people would go through multiple times trying to change the outcome, even though it was all an illusion.
Wow, that's insane. That's so incredible what you guys did. Wow. So, but you're not Scary Farm. If I haven't sold it to our audience, for those who have not been yet, I don't know what else I can do. I'm sure you're going to help, but
if I could just piggyback on something you said, Not Scary Farm is not family friendly. It is for adults. Somebody asked on a Facebook page just yesterday, is it okay to bring an 8-year-old? And I said, nothing says I love you like a lifetime of therapy. It's not for children. If anybody's ever asked me about it, I go, look, Knott's Berry Farm is a family tradition since the 1920s here in Buena Park. Knott's Scary Farm is for adults. I don't see anything wrong with saying there's an event that's for older kids and adults and not really for children. When I see a stroller at Scary Farm, I just go, oh, what are you doing? Why you got a stroller here?
Yeah, no, that's a good point. Thank you. And again, you obviously know a lot more details about Not Scary Farm. I'm just an occasional guest, so I appreciate you kind of sharing color on that.
Well, yeah, sure. We're trying to scare the daylights out of you. And that may involve things that are, it's gruesome stuff in there. And it's not really for kids. It's just not.
Yeah, no, for sure. And I appreciate that. And certainly, so that's where Universal's kind of more family friendly. And there's a room for that, of course. So Jeff, in terms of what you get more involved with at Not Scary Farm, you're more of a show person. So like, for example, are you involved with the hanging?
Yeah. I was one of the writers on the hanging for 12 years.
Okay. So I'll talk about the hanging for a little bit here. So in 2017, I got to see the hanging for the first time. And for audience, those that aren't familiar with what the hanging is, it's basically a horror comedy show, and it's not a maze. And it's basically, one way to describe it is, go ahead. Sorry.
I was going to say, you can use past tense. It was a show.
It was. It's not. Yeah, right. It doesn't exist anymore. So it was. But what it's great about, and if those of our audience who've been to Universal, the Bill and Ted's show. You could think of it sort of like that. So the hanging, basically it pans and it does satire of the past year's events. Like there's politics in it. You know, for example, 2017, President Trump was in it, and Hillary Clinton. And I love that you guys will go after things like that, which for a lot of media now, they don't go near stuff. You know, you can't make fun of certain things. You don't talk about this. You don't talk about that. And I loved how edgy that show was, especially in its time.
Oh, I agree. Some of the most fun I've ever had was sitting in on writing sessions for that show, because the people who put it together were some of the funniest people I've ever worked with. It's a shame that society has reached a point where people just don't have a sense of humor anymore.
Yeah, I couldn't agree with you more. And that's why that show. Yeah. And that's, so even back then, and this was only, when was the last hanging? Was it 2017 or after that?
2019 was the last hanging.
2019. Okay. Yeah. Okay. So it's a shame.
The hanging in 2019 ended with Jeffrey Epstein lecturing the audience on being able to take a joke and then hanging himself. So that's it. That's all, folks. It's over.
Right.
There's nowhere to go after that.
Yeah. And see, this is what I love about you, Jeff, is again, we relate to each other because, you know, all these movies we're fans of and horror movie and on cinema and storytelling, but you also have a great sense of humor. I mean, it's been displayed throughout this interview and I love it. And you see how I responded to it. And again, I love comedy. I'm the kind of person, I don't offend easily, but unfortunately, the world we live in now, you know, it's the majority that kind of leads the way. And unfortunately, a lot of people, they don't take jokes like they used to. And I wish that would be different. And if that could be perhaps another mission of this podcast, to kind of let people start laughing again, because laughing is good for you. It's one of the best things for you. But I tip my hat again to you and your team at Not Scary Farm there, where even up to just 2 years ago, you were doing that edgy comedy, because a lot of media comedians, even stand-up comedians, have given up on that long before that.
Right. So, well, the hanging was picketed and tried to be censored from day one. When it was just a scary witch hanging in Calico Square, the local witches complained.
Are you joking, or I mean, what are you?
No, I'm totally serious.
Oh, okay. So
the show was changed to a gypsy hanging.
Oh, when you say the local witches, you mean like Wiccan, like things like that? Oh.
Yeah. So then the gypsies complained.
Oh my God.
So then the show went away for a few years. And when it came back, it was a parody show so that nobody got offended, because everybody was offended. And it ran for years and years like that. And it was the edgiest, craziest thing ever. And then a combination of political correctness, people losing their sense of humor, those horrible movies that we're convinced cribbed from us, those disaster movie, epic movie, date movie, used a lot of our jokes. Where do you go? Again, when Jeffrey Epstein is giving you a lecture, we're done. We're out.
Right.
Peace out, homie.
Right. Well, it was great while it lasted. And
it sure as hell was.
Yeah.
Are you kidding?
I don't offend, but I know the world we live in. So when I saw the hanging just that one time in 2017, I was like, oh my God, this is amazing. These guys are doing this.
You can still do this legally?
Yeah, I feel like I'm in the 80s or the 90s again. Yeah. Oh my God, so cool. Yeah, so great. Again, thinking back to the mission of this podcast, what would you say, you know, you're a storyteller, you're involved with creating these haunts. What would you say the role is in theme park haunts and helping people face their fears?
You know, it's funny. I've had this question on other shows, so I always give the same answer, and it's an easy answer.
Sure.
There are very few things in life that we're all going to experience. Not everybody's going to get married. Not everybody's going to have kids, but we're all going to die. Everybody is going to face death at some point. So being able to face it with friends and conquer it and laugh at it in a couple of minutes or walk through a maze is very therapeutic. It is essential. It is why people sat around campfires 1,000 years ago, retelling stories of near-death experiences and scaring people with ghost stories, because it is the one thing we're all going to have to face. And it's the one thing that scares all of us. So we take a little slice of it and enjoy it.
That's a very interesting perspective. I never thought about things that way. because again, I love haunts, but yeah, again, there's the two things that are always this definitely firmly going to happen in life, or death and taxes, as the saying goes. And, we're not talking about taxes. We want to be fun in this podcast, somewhat fun. So, but we talk, so as far as death goes, again, everyone death is going to happen to all of us.
A tax themed walkthrough maze.
I was thinking about that as I was thinking,
you didn't carry the one. Oh.
Talk about scary. I mean, hey, I might have given you your next idea right there.
I know.
So, certainly death. It's something to face it together in a fun, safe environment, and where you can kind of like, okay, I'm actually going to die. It sucks, but okay, we can kind of be fun about this and just kind of cathartic about it. So that's interesting. That's interesting.
I might have cribbed that from Wes Craven, so I don't remember.
Oh, a brilliant storyteller right there. Love his films. Yeah, for sure. It's may he rest in peace. Yeah. How do you find balance when you're creating a theme park haunt attraction to get just the right amount of scary in? Again, for Not Scary Farm, it's right there in the name. Again, you guys are one of the edgiest stuff, especially of the mainstream haunts. So how do you get that balance?
I don't think you worry about the balance. I think you just worry about, is the story good? Is it scary? There was a point in the late 90s, early 2000s where marketing was very into having 13 mazes. There had to be 13 mazes because 13 is a scary number and we got to have 13 mazes. So what came out of that was you'd have the majority of them were scary. There were some that were outright horror. And then we used to do mazes that were actually humorous. We've done a few humorous mazes over the years to try to, like what you're talking about, balance.
Right.
They never work. People hate them. People want to rip the walls out. They hate them. I don't think you worry about the balance. I think you just worry about, are we telling the right story? Are people walking through and getting what the story is? And certainly with some of the mazes we've done the last few years, Origins, The Depths, Dark Entities, these have really involved stories that encourage you to leave, get back in line, and do it again.
Oh, interesting to experience it. Yeah. Well, yeah. Again, you guys, you're all about creating your own original ideas for these haunts. So you guys are amazing at it. I remember when I did the last That's Not Scary Farm 2017. I did the Mice Chat event, and we toured the Red Barn. It was one of the back behind the scenes, and hearing all the backstory of that. And that's fantastic. So given that Not Scary Farm is edgy and you guys don't shy away from scaring people, you don't necessarily worry about, you want to focus on making the high quality experience a good story and immersive, but not, okay, interesting. That makes sense. You've been involved with Not Scary Farm. Has it been since 94, since you started with Knott's, or how long have you been involved with that part of things?
Well, 94 and 95, I actually worked the event in different capacities. And then in 96, I took a backstage role of teaching the monsters and looking at the monsters. So it began in 96, so 25 years.
Okay. Wow. Okay. Maybe share with our audience and myself here a couple of your favorite Not Scary Farm moments over the years.
There have been so many.
I know, of course.
They're so rich. Watching people slide for the first time on the streets, and watching sliding take over the whole industry. I mean, that's amazing, right? That a bunch of guys invented this what's now become almost the extreme sport. It's crazy.
Those sliders are now for our audience with what we're talking about. These sliders, they wear these like knee pads with metal on them, right?
Metal, right? Urethane,
urethane, and they run and then they slide like almost like sliding and like baseball or something, but on their knees, and they make these sparks happen right in front of people and they make this noise with these sliders.
I can tell you one of my absolute favorite moments over the years, and that's I was with Doug and company for season pass, and we were going to watch Possessed in the Mystery Lodge Theater. Now, I had seen, I monitored Possessed quite a bit because, you want to make sure the show's at its top. You could tell people's emotions when they walked in. I turned to Doug and I said, you see that guy right there? Sitting there in the middle of the row, he's going to have a problem. I can tell. I can just tell. And Doug was like, yeah, sure. In the show, the ghost ends up killing everybody on stage. And then the ghost turns and looks at the audience and says, now I want to play with all of you. And that guy stood up and he said, you ain't playing with me. And he ran out. Doug looked at me and he said, "Oh my God, how did you do that?" I said, "You can just tell." And the best part about this whole thing, there's a podcast and a YouTube channel called Parks and Cons. They go to all the events. Sean and Carmel, they're great people. They recorded that episode, and you can watch it on YouTube, and you can hear the guy at the end go, "You ain't playing with me," and then he runs out. You can almost hear the Fred Flintstone as his feet go.
Oh, wow. That's insane.
Yeah.
Okay. Wow. That's really cool.
Yeah. And then there's a million moments in Trapped. I talked about almost being fired. There was at the beginning of Trapped, we put people in a waiting room with couches and magazines, and we wrote messages in the magazines thinking people would think they were puzzles while they waited. They weren't. Right. But about 3 days in, I realized there was a telephone on the wall that was used by the ushers to talk from front of house to back of house. I had the door removed from the little phone box, and I would stand in the control room, and I would call the lobby, and I would let the phone ring forever until one of the guests would answer.
Right.
Go, "Hello," and I'd go, "Hi," like the guy from Scream. "Hi, you've won a prize." "What did I win?" I go, "You get to decide who dies first. Point them out." Some people would do it and someone won't, and they'd go, "Well, I guess them." And I go, "Oh, the one in the red shirt? You got it. When we kill her, we're going to let her know that it was your fault." And I kid you not, we had people, the way you got out of Trapped, if you weren't having a good time, you said boysenberry. We had a safe word. People would boysenberry out in that room before they even got to the maze. I would immediately, in my shirt and tie, run in and go, "Hi, folks, are you really saying boysenberry? Because, we're not going to take it here. Why don't you wait till you get in the maze?" And some people were like, when the Cowardly Lion just runs from the wizard out we had people do that. That was so much fun. Oh yeah. God, was it fun.
I love that misdirection and that, again, that higher level of immersion too, that you kind of talk about some of those stories. But so for that boysenberrying out, that safe word out, do you have an estimate, like, just roughly speaking, in the several years of Trapped, of what percentage of a guest at some point in Trapped actually did boysenberry out?
Well, William Castle, when I came up with it, I said, well, nobody's going to use it. Who would pay $60?
Right.
And then want to end the experience? They'd be crazy. It was about 10%. I mean, it was a pretty high number. We used to keep a running tab of how many people boysenberried out, and we compared notes. We were very into it. There were boysenberries because it was too stressful, having to drink. You had to eat a bug and then drink warm buttermilk. I mean, it was not pleasant.
Are these real bugs? Is this kind of like a fear factor thing?
Yeah, it was real bugs. Yeah, real crickets. Wow. One of the rooms was a guy with jars of urine, and then he would make you drink warm apple cider with salt in it. So it was pretty much urine. Oh, wow. And this is intense. People would lose their minds. The hanging part, people, like I said, they actually wet themselves and had to boysenberry out. My absolute favorite was people would get to the part with the dominatrix, and if the boyfriend was having too good a time, the girlfriend would say boysenberry. Yeah. And I would do everything in my power to say, no, you don't have to leave. We understand what you're doing, but it's so much more fun inside. Why don't you wait till you go inside? And some did and some didn't, because I go, there's no refunds.
Wow. I hope that you guys can do something like this again. I know the world we live in, and I talked about earlier how I'm hoping to be able to go to Not Scary Farm in September if things line up. Is there anything? I know it's a little early here, but is there anything you can share about what Not Scary Farm fans have in store for 2021 with it returning? Nothing.
I can't say a word.
Okay, your lips are sealed.
All I can say is I'm so excited for what we're doing this year, and what I'm doing, I'm so ready to unveil to the world, but it's too early. I can't talk about it.
Okay, awesome. But it's something. Is it okay? Can you say this without not saying what it is? Is it something where it's like a creativity thing, where it's something different and new?
Oh, I'm pushing the envelope again. I
can't wait.
I can't wait.
Gotta go.
I'm always very clear, especially on social media. Trapped is not coming back. We're not at that level to come back. But what I have come up with, I think, is pretty cool. And I'm just excited to be doing it.
I'm excited. I know
and I'm excited to be working with very talented people.
Oh, nice. That's awesome. I know there's some announcements that are coming here very soon here as we're recording. Yeah, that's awesome.
You'll know exactly what it is when it's revealed. You go, oh, that's what he's talking about.
Awesome. You know, we talked a little bit earlier about, you know, like special ops infected with actually having laser tag as part of a haunt maze where the guests are immersed. You know, talked about the Gantum lighting, flashlights, through that technology. Obviously, Knott's, you guys do a great job of incorporating, you know, new technology. You're keeping things fresh. You update old mazes like Trick or Treat Lights Out with those flashlights. That was an older maze you guys were able to bring back to life in an amazing way. Obviously, technology plays a role and creativity and so forth. Is there any thoughts that you have? You know, we now have, like, granted, again, thinking post-pandemic because of contact and whatnot, but, you know, with VR technology, AR technology, do you see anything happening with that or something else, say in the next 5 to 10 years, where we're going to see some nice advancements with haunts?
Yeah, I think you're already starting to see it, but it'll get better. And that's video mapping, where you can change the room while somebody's in it. You can make it immersive in ways that we've never had before. I think that's going to be a real game changer. I know a lot of the haunts are using smells, and I've seen things that you touch and they shock you. I'm not really into that kind of stuff, but I think that immersive stuff, like I said, video mapping. I've always wanted to figure out a way to call people on their phones and make them part of something that makes them really question reality. I know that there was one in LA that did it a couple of years back, where they called you on the phone and had you go to a certain spot. So I think there's something to be had in all that. There's something there. I'm not sure exactly what it'll be. We're all along for the ride, you know. And the other thing is, like, if you've seen Area 51, Las Vegas, I think I called Area 51 Area 15. The one in Vegas is by the Meow World?
Meow Wolf, which is very creative.
Meow Wolf, like, so it's non-linear. You just walk through, and what you experience. I think there's something to that too. Eventually.
Oh, sure. That makes a lot of sense. I love the sounds of that. And yeah, that's very encouraging. Yeah. Wow. Kind of the last main question I have, just given what we talked about here, we talk about how haunts help people face fears and face the ultimate fear in life, which is death and whatnot. Do you have any advice for people that are listening that are trying to make their lives better by incorporating theme parks? Any thoughts?
The advice I would give is spend less time on social media and more time doing something that makes you feel good. Because I see so many people in the parks who just stare at their phones all day. There's an old sign that you've seen in memes that says, "Where will you be staring at your phone today?" You know, it's funny that I would say in the future we might be calling people on their phones or that sort of thing, but there needs to be a real disconnect so that people are actually in the moment. You don't realize how quickly those moments go. And nobody on their deathbed is going to say, "Boy, I wish I'd spent more time on Twitter." No one's ever going to say that.
No, absolutely not.
You know, put your phone down and look up once in a while and see some of the amazing things that are waiting for you. And also remember, I grew up in the 80s. Getting into a long queue was part of the experience. It was how you bonded with your friends, and you talked about, "Oh, we're excited to go on the ride, and I can't wait to go on the ride." And now we're on the ride. And as you go, look, now everybody just stares at phones all day. And it's you know, and I get that I'm old and that's not my thing. You know, I always say, in the land of the blind, the one-eyed man is king. And I'm the guy who doesn't stare at his phone and looks around like, "Oh, I'm noticing all these things." And I'm just an old fool. What do I know?
No, I thank you, Jeff. No, that's great advice there. That's not advice that people have shared before. Again, when we ask this question, we usually get a new thing each time. Mm-hmm. And that's about being in the moment. And for example, when you're at a park, for example, which is what we're talking about here, at a haunt, at a theme park, going on a ride, and a queue for a ride, waiting for a show to start, whatever it may be. Yeah, if you're on your phone, you're not enjoying what you're seeing. You're not enjoying the theming of the queue, or talking to your friends, getting excited about the ride, or, you know, it's just the social thing. And be in the moment, enjoy where you're at, really get the most out of that immersion, because it's healthy for you. It's fun. It's good for you. So I love that advice, Jeff. Thank you. Yeah, stay off your phones somewhat, at least. So last thing here, Jeff, I'd like to give you the opportunity again. I know you work for Knott's, and I know you have your own podcast. So if you like to share, however people can find and connect with you or hear more from you, again, like your podcast, if you have a website, YouTube, social media, whatever you'd like to share. Thank
you.
Well,
I'm actually not on much. I'm on Facebook. That's the only social media that I do. I don't have time for the other social media. I don't find it interesting. Getting into arguments with people is not how I want to spend my day.
Agreed.
But I do a podcast. It's called 91 Reasons. You can pick it up pretty much anywhere you get a podcast. I have a fun YouTube channel where I put up videos of my family doing stuff. It's called Tucker Time. You can find that on YouTube. They're not terribly exciting, but they are fun to watch. I write books, so if you want to go on Amazon, I have a book series called The Sixth Key, which is about magicians. And if you found any of that Back to the Future stuff interesting, I did write Your Friend in Time, How Back to the Future Changed My Life. And that's my stuff.
Wow, you've given me some things I want to check out now. Thank you so much, Jeff. Wow. Well, thank you so much for your time. I know this was a long interview. It was really fun for me. I hope it was fun for you.
A lot of fun. Absolutely.
Awesome. All right. Well, I certainly, for one, look forward to what Not Scary Farm has in store and just getting back to Not Scary Farm after not being there for 4 years myself, hopefully this September, and seeing what you and the rest of the team there at Knott's has got cooked up. So thank you so much.
My pleasure. Come see me in the fog.
Thank you, Andrew. Thank you, Jeff. That was a really incredible story, huh, Jen?
Yeah, it was.
Yeah, I will tell you that I was really shocked that Jeff is a huge Back to the Future fan. I am as well, and at least he got to walk the back lot of Universal to see all those sets back in the day. I've been over at Universal when they were filming Back to the Future Part 2, and I actually got to see how Hill Valley looked like in the future of 2015, and I wish they still had that to this day. Universal still has the clock tower, although it all burnt down in the fire many years ago, but they still rebuilt everything, but it's a tad different now than it was then.
Oh yeah, but it seems like they have a fire on their back lot. I don't know, every 5 years. It seems like,
and because
maybe
everything's
10?
made of styrofoam and all kinds of materials, it burns so quickly. So,
right.
But he did it. I will say the fact that Jeff was so involved with Not Scary Farm. In fact, it was amazing that he got a job there. He was looking at it as a summer gig, like something just fun to do for a while until he found something better. And now all of a sudden, almost 30 years later, he's still there, and he's practically helped directing a lot of the activities that go on with Not Scary Farm. I think it's really cool.
I love the story of the kid that had autism, and with the whole doing the letters and having that interaction for that town, for the ghost town area. I think that is really awesome.
Yeah.
I mean, that is very touching, especially seeing how I've worked with grown adults that had autism and all these just different disabilities. I think that is really awesome.
I think that's really cool what he mentioned too. Like, stuff like that can really help people with disabilities, just like how roller coasters have helped me with my Tourette's and helping break my fears. Events like this at the theme parks really are good therapy for all those that have disabilities like myself and like what other people have. I think it's a really incredible thing, and like I said, I want to take this opportunity to thank Jeff for really coming on to help us kick off our Halloween edition season. But until then, guys, thank you so much. And also, Justin, where can they find us on social media?
If you enjoyed today's episode, be sure to like and subscribe wherever you get your podcast. And if you want to see more from us, we upload every Friday. And check us out on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, YouTube, all at Coaster Challenge. Links in the description.
Thank you, Justin. Yeah, guys, make sure to hit that subscribe button and make sure to follow us on all our social media platforms. We really appreciate your guys' love and support out there, and we want to give a shout out to all our international listeners as well. I really want to thank all you guys for taking the time to show us some love and support out there, and we want you to know that we do see you out there listening, and we do appreciate your love and support. But until then, this is David Cantu.
This is Jenna Gazelle.
And we'll see you all next week with a special edition of Coaster Challenge Podcasts.